there, I'm Jamie Smith, and today I want to show you how to install and use the every 15-minute webinar scripts that go on both the registration page and the thank you page so that your users are directed to register for a webinar that will run every 15 minutes. So at 15, 30, 45, and 0 past the hour, and then also when they land on the thank you page, they'll be automatically directed when that 15 minutes hits. So I say you register at 12:01, at 12:15, you'll get redirected to the broadcast room. So I want to show you how to run through and install these scripts and set up your funnel so that everything works like it should. So we're going to go in, we're inside my ClickFunnels account now. We're going to go ahead and go in and we're going to create a new funnel. We're going to do a host a webinar funnel, and we're going to do a webinar replay, and that's an automated webinar funnel. So it's, you'll have a replay video, but this is for pre-recorded webinars, which is what we're running for the every 15 minutes. So we're going to click choose, and we're going to do every 15 demo, and then we'll just do demo. Apply that to the tag, and we'll go ahead and click build funnel. Take just a second for these pages to build up. I'm going to shut off my ringer here while we sit and wait. And then let's just pick a decent looking funnel. We've got some nice ones in here. Which ones? I kind of always like the blue. So let's go ahead and we'll just pick this one here. We kind of like the blue, but you can certainly do whatever you like. A lot of times I will just take these funnels, start from an auto webinar registration page, since the functionality is built into the back end, and then just strip everything out and start from scratch and build up the design again, but you'll have all the elements available for you. So let's go ahead and do a couple things here. Let's go ahead and build out all of our pages before we even start dropping code in. Let's go into each one of our pages and build those out and select some templates. That way we have fully functional funnel from the get-go. And on this one, let's go ahead and select this template here. I like this one because it has a video in there, so you can actually play a thank you video that talks about, hey, thanks for registering for the webinar. It's going to start shortly. In the meantime, here's a few things you can do to prepare yourself. Make sure you go ahead and shut off your phone so that you can, pay your full attention and get the most value out of these things. I've spent a lot of time putting these things together, and I want to make sure that you get the most out of it, and that sort of thing. So that page is built out now, and then let's go into the webinar broadcast room. And we'll pick a version here. I tend to start with this one actually, but you can pick any of these are good. This is another good one here. If you're going to use a Google Hangout type video, you can use this. I tend to go with a webinar broadcast room with an order button already built into it, because a lot of times that's what you want, is to have a time delay order button show up at a certain point in the webinar. And so we'll let that build out. And then we'll go into the webinar replay room, and I believe there's only one of these templates anyway, so we're going to go ahead and select that template, and we'll go from there. So now we have all four of these pages built out. We don't have any order forms or anything like that. We're not going to worry about that during this lesson, but we're going to walk in and set up the countdowns and the countdown for the time display on the page of what time the webinar is going to play at and how long until it starts, and then also that on the thank you page. So let's jump into our registration page, and we need a few things here. So we're going to go ahead and click Edit. Take a second to load. So one thing we're going to want to show on these pages is when is the next session. So that'll say something like, hey, the next web class begins at, and then show a time. And then the other thing we'll want to have is a countdown. Again, it gives a little more clear sense of urgency if we have an actual countdown on it. So we'll go ahead and add those things in here. If we click and add new element, and we're just going to add a headline, and I'm going to set the text to white since it's on this dark background. We'll go ahead and grab that, set it to white, and then we can say next web class at. And then to prepare us for the script when it's installed, we're gonna actually set this, instead of putting in an actual time, we could say next web class begins at 15 minutes, but we don't know when that 15 minutes will be, because if they come in at 12:03, it's going to be 12 minutes. If they come in at 12:07, it's going to be 8 minutes, whatever. So we're just going to put in this webinar time, and what's going to happen is our script is going to replace that with the actual time the next webinar will start. So we're going to set it just like that, next web class at webinar time, webinar _ time with the double curly braces. And then we're going to do something special here, and we are going to, we're actually going to call this we're going to set this to we're going to set the CSS info title. So what we're going to do is click the gear icon to pull up our settings tab, and then go to the get CSS info, which is the little hashtag icon down at the bottom. And then we're going to name this headline. We're going to call the CFE 15-time. CFE 15-time. That's going to tell the code that this is where we want to display our time at, the webinar time. And so what it's going to do is it's going to look for this webinar time substitution variable, and it's going to put the actual time formatted out into what looks like a time. So that's the first step. The next thing we want to do is actually build in a countdown timer. And so this, we want to go in and put in, we want just a regular countdown. And so we're going to do the countdown. Let's see here. We want to go to countdown. We actually want the minute timer. Sorry, we want the minute timer countdown because this is going to give us a countdown for minutes. And we can set this to default. It's going to be overridden when the page loads, but I like to set these with a default of 15 minutes. Since it's in every 15, it just kind of makes sense to me logically, but it's going to get overridden as soon as the page loads fully. Then the script is going to look at the user's local time, and it's going to calculate the next 15-minute interval, and then it's going to reset the countdown to count to that next 15-minute interval. So, but we'll start with setting this at every 15 minutes. We don't need to touch anything else here, but we do want to change the theme. So in this, we can go into themes. We can go in and we can change. We could use the blue here. We could use, one of these. We could use the blue here. We could use the yellow. This tends to stand out and look nice. And then the other thing we can do is go into advanced, and we want to say the label color is going to be white, since we have this kind of dark background, you can't really see it. And let's go ahead and set the size to large on this one, so it pops out a little bit more. Next web class in, so that looks good. And then what we want to do is actually set this CSS info as well. Again, click the gear icon, click the get CSS info, click the little hashtag, and instead of minute countdown, we're going to change this to CFE 15 for CF every 15 -countdown. We're going to click update, and we're going to click save on that. And then I like to change these out every time. We're just going to call this my awesome every 15-minute webinar. Demo. And we'll put in Jamie Smith. There we go. And we'll go ahead and click Save Now. Now our little SEO metadata warning won't show up every time. We really don't need to worry about changing anything else on this. This one actually opens the pop-up. So let's go ahead and take a look at what the pop-up has built into it. And so this is where we want to remove some things, because by default this template includes a pop-up for the registration, and the pop-up includes a hey, pick your webinar time. Well, we don't want them to pick their webinar time. We are setting the webinar time to be every 15 minutes. So we just need to delete this. So we're going to delete the selector, and we're going to delete this time selector. We're going to delete that. We're going to leave the name and email address. You could remove the name if you wanted to and just collect email. That's your preference. Some people don't like to collect name because every field that you add to your sign-up form decreases your conversion rate. But a lot of times that name really does come in handy if you want to personalize your emails that are going out. But otherwise, we want this to be the same. So this is going to submit the page. So you could just leave this here. The other thing you could do is you could insert another headline that actually says the same as on the first page, which is next web class at whatever time. And so let's go ahead and do that. I want to throw that in here. We're going to go ahead and add a headline, and let's throw this in, see if we can get it to drop in above. Doesn't look like it's going to drop above. We'll have to kind of drag around here a little bit. There we go. And we're just going to say, just like we did before, next web class at webinar time. And this will actually probably shrink up into a single line for us on our next page. When we actually preview it, it's a little bit longer than what will actually show up. But I'm going to go ahead and decrease this font size just a little bit. And I'm also going to change this to, I'm going to get rid of the margin is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to suck that up there a little bit. And then we want to add a countdown. And again, we're going to go to countdown. We're going to go to minute timer, drag that in. And this one we can actually leave with this style. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of this margin. And we want to go ahead and, again, set this to 15 minutes. Again, that doesn't really matter. You could leave it at 30 minutes if you wanted to, and it's automatically going to calculate to the next 15-minute interval when the page loads. And then this all looks pretty good. Nothing really need to change there, but we do need to go ahead and set our CSS title here to CFE 15, E15, not 315, countdown. And go ahead and click our update button. And then we need to make sure that our headline, I don't know if I already did that. No, I did not. So we need to change that again as well to CFE 15-time. Again, this is going to let the code know that go and find any place in this headline that has webinar time and replace it with the actual time of the next 15-minute increment. And so now we've got this headline and our countdown on our pop-up as well. And so that's looking good. So let's go ahead and save that. And then the last thing we're going to do is actually grab our code. And so I'm going to do that. It's off screen here, so sorry that I'm using a dual monitor setup, so sorry it's not pulling in both. But I'm going to grab my code. You'll grab this from your members area. You'll have the code for the CF every 15-minute webinar reg code for the registration page, and then you'll also have one for the thank you page, and we'll use that next. So we're going to grab the registration page code. We're going to go into settings, tracking code, and then footer code, and then we're going to paste in that code. And that's all there is to that. And we're going to go ahead and click save. And now let's go ahead and just open this up and preview it and make sure everything's working like it should. Cross our fingers always on these things. And we can see now that it is currently, of course, I started at exactly at a 15-minute interval. So it is 4:45 p.m. here Eastern, and our next web class is at 5 p.m. and our countdown is 14 minutes here. And so we just changed to 4:46, and now we're at just under 14 minutes until the next class begins. So that is working exactly like we would expect it to. So that's perfect. So now let's move on to our thank you page. And so we're going to go ahead and exit out of this, and we're going to go ahead and go into our webinar countdown page. I call this the webinar thank you page. You know, we want to thank people for registering for the webinar, but it is the countdown that shows them, hey, the webinar is about to begin. And so we'll go ahead and go into this and let them know, okay, congrats, you're booked, blah, blah, blah. Here's a video, again, nice little video. Hey, thanks so much for registering. Here's a few things you can do while you wait on your webinar to get started. And then what we're going to do, we don't need this webinar date and time because, you know, it's only 15 minutes. If they can't remember that they just signed up, it's less than 15 minutes from now. If they can't remember they just signed up for a webinar, that's a big deal. So go ahead and delete that out. And we'll go ahead and delete that out as well. And then the add to calendar, again, it's less than 15 minutes from now. We don't really need them to add it to the calendar. We just need them to show up. And so let's go ahead and duplicate this headline because and pull this down in here. And let's put this one, web class begins at, you guessed it, webinar time. Okay, that's great. And again, it's going to be a little smaller because that webinar time is actually shorter. It's going to be, you know, in this case, 4:40, or it'll be 5:00 p.m. So as all that's going to display, that's a lot shorter than webinar time. So you can shrink that up if you want to, but you don't really need to. But again, you would just, you know, got access to all your settings here. If you wanted to make that, you know, 28 pixel font, you could do that. And then let's go ahead and throw in. Let's throw in a countdown here, and we're going to go ahead and again we're going to do minute timer. Oh, I didn't drop it very well, so it did not stick. So we'll do, oh, that's not the one I want. I want the minute timer. Go to countdown, minute timer, drag it in, and let it sit. There we go. And then I always like to set this to 15. It's, again, just a matter of preference. I'm going to set, again, the webinar time, or the CSS title to the same thing, CFE 15-countdown for the countdown timer. I'm going to click update. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of some of these settings, or get some of this margin gone. So And then what I like to do, and we also need to set our CSS info for this headline. We need to set that to CF E15-time. Click update. And then what I often like to do is put a little paragraph down below here that says something like, your web class will begin when the timer reaches 00, 00, 00, 00. Something like that, and you can, highlight that and make it all bold, do kind of whatever you want to there. But that, that kind of lets people know what's going to happen, what to expect. Your web class will, or you could even say something, you'll be, could do something like, you'll be automatically redirected to the web class when the timer reaches 0, or automatically redirected to the broadcast room when, something like that. That lets people know what's going to happen, what to expect. Do I just sit here? What do I do? And just so that kind of gives them an idea. You can also do that in your video. I'm going to go ahead and kill off this timer. We don't need it. We've got one up above. And in fact, we can kill this entire row. And then the only other thing we need to do again is go ahead and grab our code for the thank you page. And I'm going to grab that off screen here, so apologize for not being able to see that, but we need to do basically the same thing. Settings, tracking code, footer code, and this again is different code for the registration page than it is for the thank you page. So we're grabbing the thank you page code here and we're throwing this on here. And the difference is this one doesn't have to set the webinar date, time, all that fun stuff. All it has to do is set the countdown and do the redirect. And then there is one other step that I forgot to mention, and that is that we want to actually include a link on this page that links to the broadcast room, which is our next step in the funnel. But we want that to be hidden because we don't want people to be clicking and just going to the broadcast room. We want the page to automatically redirect them to the broadcast room. That way we give them a little bit of time to watch this video here. If they get in a little bit early, we want them to feel like it's an automated system, which it is. But we want to go ahead and add an element that lets the code grab the next page URL. So we want to go ahead and go in, and we can just create a button. Nobody's going to see it. We can say, we don't have to change anything really because it's going to be hidden. But I'm going to call it go to the broadcast room. And we'll just do that. And we're going to set the action to go to next step in funnel. And that's all we need to do there. And then the next thing we want to do is we actually want to set this, set the CSS info title here. And we're going to set this title to next-url-link. And so this is just saying that this is the next, this is the button on the page that includes the URL to the next page. So we're going to go ahead and click update, and the code is going to expect this button, but it doesn't need to be visible. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to set this to hidden. The code just needs to be able to find the URL, and so that's all we've got there. And again, we'll set this my awesome every 15-minute webinar. Thank you. And Smith, there we go. Normally, obviously, you change out all the design, you change out the videos, you change out your, your pictures and only 200 spots and all that stuff. But we're not going to worry about that today. We're just going to throw this up. And so again, we'll just do a quick preview on this. And if we do a preview, we should see a countdown timer. Oh, we did something wrong because we're not picking up our webinar time. So let's look and see what we might have done wrong there. I see what the issue was. I will be back. I'm going to pause this video, fix an issue, and be right back. Okay, and we're back. Sorry about that. I actually grabbed the wrong version of the code. So everything was set up the same, nothing you need to do differently. I just grabbed the wrong version of the code, and so the webinar time wasn't included in that version. So if we do a preview now, we will see what we expect to see, which is web class begins at 5 p.m. and the countdown timer that shows that. So we are again at 4:56. So we're just less than 4 minutes shy of the webinar time. And so we can see that countdown is working properly, and we've got everything working like we want to. Another option that you have here is if you don't want to use the countdown, have this webinar time, you could just say something like web class begins in, and just have a countdown, and that works pretty well also. And so that'd be, web class begins in 3 minutes and 22 seconds. And that might be also something that works pretty well. Again, we don't necessarily need to call out the time on this. We just need to call out, hey, it's coming shortly. So just stick around for a few minutes and you'll get redirected right over there. So that works as well. You don't necessarily have to use the time on these. You could use just the countdown. I like to use the time display on the registration page because it just seems more natural there. Here, it might just be that, hey, your web class is going to begin in just a couple of minutes, and so that one works just as well. So that is how you install and use the webinar countdown. And so let's go ahead and run through, since we're getting close to time here, let's go ahead and back out of this, and we're going to go ahead and open this up in an incognito, and we're actually going to go through the registration process. So if I go in and open up my registration page, and I'm going to go ahead and open this in an incognito window, and I'm going to see my registration, and the class begins at 5 p.m., starts in 2 minutes and 18 seconds, and I'm going to register my spot. Now, normally I would put a button right below here as well, but here's one that we have that will open up our registration form, and we're going to go ahead and enter the name, and then I'm going to put Jamie plus, I always like to use the date, so I can keep these unique, 05/17-1 at cfprotools.com. And then, so you always want to use a unique email address here. So that's why I use this plus, and then everything in between. This is a Google service for me, and it removes everything between the plus and the at is, it is just generic. It will still make it to jamie@cfprotools.com. And so if I click secure your spot now, then we should get loaded onto our thank you page. And then we'll sit, I won't make you wait 1 minute and 24 seconds, but what we'll see is as this gets a little bit closer to time, I'm gonna go ahead and pause the video. I'll come back as we get close to the countdown time. I'll show you what it looks like when this actually forwards. So I will be back in 1 minute. Okay, we pressed record just in time. We're coming back to our countdown timer, and let's keep our fingers crossed. Everything works like it should, and boom, we are in our broadcast room. Take just a second for our video to load, and we go through here. So this would be our automated video. This is the other thing that is important about using these automated webinar templates, is that we cannot click to pause this video. This one is hosted on Wistia, I believe. This is one of the comes with the template, but because we use the automated webinar template page type, it puts a video blocker element over the video, so it plays like a live webinar would, and so you can come through and people would appear to be somewhat live, so they're not going to be able to pause the video or rewind or fast forward or anything like that, and you could certainly have your button be hidden until a certain point in the video. So as you go into your offer and your stack, then you could have your buy button appear, and you could also have your stack as you go through. You could even time those things out to say, here's what you're going to get, show this at this time, show this at this time, show this at this time, and go through that way, and then give people the option to buy. So that's how an automated webinar page would work if you wanted to run it every 15 minutes. Hopefully you've enjoyed this, and I'll talk to you again real soon.